For Bitcoin, it's not like a company where a company develops and grows over time on its own, and its value goes up over time as the business grows. And therefore, we say that it has intrinsic values, and that's what Buffett always mentions. But for Bitcoin, since it's not a farm or a company that keeps growing over time, and I think that's why Buffett and Charlie Munger says that Bitcoin is a scam and will eventually go to zero, since they do not have any intrinsic values, but just waiting for another person to buy the Bitcoin at a higher price. I would love to hear your opinion on these statements and where you see the actual value is for Bitcoin.
It's a very valid point, and I agree in the sense that Bitcoin will either go to infinity or zero. These are the only two outcomes. Bitcoin doesn't just kind of stay at 30,000 forever, right? One of those two outcomes have to happen. What's a scenario where Bitcoin goes to zero? Okay, well, let's say Bitcoin is copied and there's Bitcoin 2.0, and let's say that all the money goes somewhere else. So I think that's more difficult than people assume. So like it's almost like saying, okay, what if someone else were to copy Google or copy Facebook or copy Apple? There's a massive network effect behind Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more than a decade old at this point. So there's a lot of history behind it. It hasn't been hacked, the protocol, and it's operated reliably. Every 10 minutes, the blockchain updates, and that's happened reliably since 2009-ish. It has a lot of staying power behind it, and it needed that history for, I'll say, the smart money or the big money, Wall Street, BlackRock, right? They're not going to get interested in a product that is 2 years old. And in fact, Wall Street derided Bitcoin for so long, right? There are lots of people, lots of examples that I can give of individuals on Wall Street that have, spouted about Bitcoin's downfall and maybe even wished for it. But so much time has passed that it hasn't gone away. Will Bitcoin be the one that lasts in the end? I can't say for sure, but it's certainly looking that way. And with every passing block that's added to the blockchain, it becomes less likely. The network just becomes more and more robust. So is Bitcoin a company? Like one that Warren Buffett would invest in, like Apple, for example? No. It's Bitcoin is an asset, not a security, because there's no real company behind it in the same sense that Ethereum or other altcoins are ultimately securities or run by a company. So Bitcoin is a network. It's I've heard it described as an engineered monetary system. It's a system, and its value is in large part derived by the user base behind it. Yeah, in a growing market, that's also why it's volatile, because when you have a small market, it is going to be volatile. But we have seen many times since the beginning where Bitcoin has gone through kind of every 3 or 4 years, that user base 10x's, right? And just like Facebook or Google, right? When you have the whole world or a large portion of the world using a particular product, it becomes very hard to disrupt or challenge that system. That's how I see that.
I think that's really interesting. That's an interesting perspective because I never thought it that way. I mean, I have been seeing a lot of institutions like, ARK Invest, BlackRock, Invesco, and even Fidelity coming out or filing for the Bitcoin ETFs. But I guess you're saying that for these institutions to even file for an ETF, they were waiting for the history of at least a decade to see how the asset works. And then I guess is now saying that they would be, comfortable enough to file for an ETF, which I think is getting denied by the SEC, but at least they're trying, and I think it will get approved in the future.
Yes, exactly. It's something that I think people that have been in the crypto industry for a long time thought would happen one day, but just didn't know when. And it even surprised me, right, that they were announcing this now, right, when Bitcoin is, I'll say, relatively unpopular, right? I think Google searches are at like a 5-year low for Bitcoin. So it's not like it's they're doing it because it's on trend or anything like that. If anything, they might be doing it just because they're trying to build positions. They almost regret that they weren't involved in the last market cycle. That's a possibility as well. But yeah, Bitcoin is definitely a disruptive force. And I think what also we've seen is waiting to see how it plays out, but also just an education component. I've been in meetings with people from various levels of government, financial institutions, and I think the biggest change that we've seen over the last 5 years is just more of a willingness to become educated and just understand, okay, Bitcoin's not going away. We should probably at least understand what it's about. Whereas I'll say the first 5 to 6, 7 years of Bitcoin's existence was, like I said earlier, Bitcoin's a fad. It's going away. Nothing's going to happen. So yeah, there's just an education component. Things have really evolved. That's just part of any kind of new and growing technology. I've heard it described with like the early days of the internet. It took about a generation for someone's grandmother to be on Facebook, right from the beginning of the World Wide Web, right, like early 90s, right? If Facebook were to launch in 1994, there just weren't enough people on the internet for it to be kind of mainstream. So these types of new technologies take time to adopt. Human nature, things just take time for people to accept and be comfortable with it. And Bitcoin is very unique in that it's not just a new technology, but there's also money at stake, right? It's a financial product. And so when it goes through these cycles, it can be painful for people that are over invested or just kind of blindly investing in it.
That's a great point. And now you say that, I was also curious, PayPal is a company that I'm personally, heavily investing right now with the all-time low. But recently PayPal came out with its own stable coin, which I think surprised a lot of investors. But I would really love to hear your thoughts on this move that PayPal has made. I think trying to get their, feet wet in the crypto industry, because I think they do see the huge opportunity or potential in the crypto space.
I think it's such a smart move that PayPal did that. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. I'm sure banks and credit unions, other financial institutions are looking at that, also surprised, intrigued why they're doing that, and also seeing how that plays out. Because PayPal is a huge company. I think maybe 400 million users, if I don't remember off the top of my head, like the size of a country. That's a lot of users. So I think exposing that user base to a cryptocurrency is very cool. And I think once capital's in that ecosystem, it's easy for it to move to other things like Bitcoin, Ethereum. It just adds a layer of comfort. The importance of PayPal offering this type of product, I think, increases the likelihood that Facebook or Meta would eventually launch this type of product as well, because Meta is another example of a company with a user base bigger than any country, independent country on earth, right? We're talking about billions of users, right? Imagine if they offered their own currency, instant settlements on Saturdays, on weekends, 24/7. I think a PayPal USD coin makes a lot of sense, and you don't have to be a crypto person to be interested in that. That's probably the most interesting thing about the PayPal launch, is that we've seen a lot of products launched for crypto people, for Bitcoin people, but this is a product that is not aimed at crypto people. This is a product aimed at everyone. Everyone, if they're working, they get paid. If they are an employer, they pay people, they pay suppliers, right? This is how the financial system works. Money moves, right? If you can make it easier for money to move, then that solves a big problem. And I think that's why PayPal has gotten into it, and I'm glad they did.
Talking about another company, so there's like two companies that I really like in the crypto space that IPO'd or in public. But I know that Coinbase is one of the companies that dominate the crypto space. But, as an expert in crypto, do you see Coinbase still being the major exchange in the future that cannot be replaced by, let's say, a decentralized exchange? And do you think that Coinbase stock would move correlated with the price of Bitcoin and therefore have, a lot of room to move up once the next Bitcoin halving cycle begins? And personally, one more question is, I'm really curious to hear how high you think a Bitcoin price can go up, since like Kathy Wood is saying, a Bitcoin could bypass $1 million. But just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's both great questions. So on the Coinbase front, so Coinbase traditionally has traded as a proxy to the price of Bitcoin, regardless of what they do. Yes, the markets aren't overheated right now, and I think they said their user bases are down. But yeah, since they've IPO'd, they typically trade as a proxy to Bitcoin, right? If you're not going to buy Bitcoin directly, or let's say you're investing from like a retirement account or something where you can't like hold Bitcoin, Coinbase is a proxy for that. Will Coinbase be the de facto crypto exchange in the future? I think the role of crypto exchanges is evolving over time. Coinbase has a lot of history behind it. I can see them pivoting to be more of a kind of a backbone custodian, which they kind of already are, right? Like these Bitcoin ETFs. Who's holding the Bitcoin? Coinbase. Coinbase is the proposed custodian for many of these Bitcoin ETFs. So I think their role changes. Will we see a day where banks allow people to buy and sell and withdraw Bitcoin? The buy and sell, probably. The withdraw, we may have to wait a little bit for that. But I think also, is there room for competition in 2023, 2024? Definitely. It's not too late to start a Bitcoin company or a crypto company. Not for the fact that Bitcoin is newish, but for the fact that most people that have gotten into Bitcoin or use Bitcoin, on average, probably haven't used it more than 3 years, right? Most people that are using Bitcoin are new to Bitcoin. So that means that when they look online, they talk to a friend, they want to buy Bitcoin, let's say they're interested in it, like me, right? When I got started, I like Bitcoin, I want to buy some. So you're going to look online, you're going to talk to a friend, you're going to try and find somewhere to buy it. So when you come across Coinbase for the first time or any other company, it doesn't really mean anything because this is your first time interacting with that brand, right? And so I think there's still room for a lot of competition because other brands can and have emerged, right, in the exchange space. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything because people are new to it. So yeah, that's how I see that unfolding. But yeah, Coinbase has done a great job just making it easy for people to buy and sell Bitcoin. And just like I said at the beginning, right, like that's something that I believe in, right? If Bitcoin is going to succeed, it needs to be easy for people to buy and sell. And so yeah, kudos to Coinbase for making that happen. And then your second question, will Bitcoin go to 1 million, 10 million, infinity? Is Cathie Wood right? Is Cathie Wood wrong? Well, let's take a step back. So the nice thing with Bitcoin is that we don't have with the US dollar or most fiat currencies around the world is we can at least predict and understand the monetary policy of Bitcoin. We know that there are 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be in existence. We're getting close to like a logarithmic curve as Bitcoins are mined, Bitcoins are introduced into the ecosystem, right? It'll peak at 21 million. So we know that. We don't know how many US dollars will ever be in existence. It's unpredictable. More dollars are printed or the currency is inflated every year, right? It has been for a long time. So we at least know that. So if we know that the US dollar will inflate over time, we know that, let's say Bitcoin does last 100 years or more. Because we know that the US dollar will inflate over time, we know that assets will become more expensive over time. So like, for example, a house in 1950 in the United States, maybe it cost $10,000 to buy. I'll just throw out a number. Right. Whereas in 2023, that same house in California and New York may cost $2 million to buy. Has the value of that house really changed over the last 70 years? No. It's just that the dollar has devalued so much that you need to it's now taking you $2 million to buy that same house. The dollar has become so much more worthless. So if we look at Bitcoin as an asset, does that mean that at some point one Bitcoin will be worth 1 million? Okay. Yes. Mathematically, yes, it will have to be worth 1 million over time, just by that very law of assets costing more over time. Okay, so we have that kind of addressed. Now, will Bitcoin hit $1 million, let's say, over the next decade? Okay, that's different because now we're not considering inflation as much because most likely the US dollar won't inflate 90% over the decade. So that means that it will require some other factor for Bitcoin to reach 1 million. Okay, what would it take to do that? And what has it taken for Bitcoin to go from $200 in 2013 to 30,000 right now? The only metric we really have is through crypto exchanges, right? Crypto exchanges are where transactions take place, people buy and sell, right? Without crypto exchanges, we wouldn't really have a basis for the spot price of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin continues on its mission and delivers and people accept it as a store of value, as a reliable store of value, and failing any other attempts for Bitcoin to be dethroned or banned, or there are certainly roadblocks that could prevent it from happening. But if it does fulfill that mission of being a reliable store of value, it's not like it has to replace gold or the US dollar or the stock market for that to mathematically happen. Like I said, there are only 21 million individual Bitcoins in existence. So we can mathematically see if the user base is large enough, then in theory, the price would have to reach 100,000, 500,000 or more. But like I said, and also for your viewers, this is not financial advice. Mathematically, there is a scenario where it could happen, is what I'm trying to say. Will it happen? I can't say. I would also caution people not to focus too much on the price, because if you do, you'll see what we saw in previous cycles, market cycles, where Bitcoin tends to do really well and then crash really hard. So, if someone were to ask, should I put all my money into Bitcoin because it's going to go to 1 million? I would caution someone from doing that because, yes, like we said earlier, it is still a very risky asset, the riskiest asset that you can hold.
That was a great way to wrap up this interview. But yeah, I mean, as you say, I am still holding my Bitcoin, and I have no plans on selling them. Thank you very much again. I think we covered a lot of topics, and I think we got a lot of great insights from you. And I think my subscribers have learned a lot, including myself, just through this interview. So again, thank you very much for your time, Michael. And I would actually love to have you as a guest again as we get near the Bitcoin halving event, or if we start seeing some significant moves in the crypto space. So again, thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking really forward to seeing you again on our, future next interview.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to it as well. Happy to come on anytime.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.